Right, hello everybody on this beautifully sunny day, and yes, I'm out on the Harley. I brought her back out of hibernation. Oh, that's a good feeling, and that's what I want to talk about. So today's episode is a bit of fun, and I thought you might enjoy this, but it made me think about the bikes that I've ridden and the bikes that have sort of, changed my view on those certain bikes or brands and all the rest of it, and changed the way that I ride and the way I view riding. So it's a little bit of a follow-on from Wednesday's episode, but what we're doing today is I'm going to give you my top 10 bikes that I think you should ride before you hang up your riding boots. How's that? So the bikes, I think if you rode them, it'll give you a different perspective on riding, or it certainly did for me anyway, and you can then compare and guess what they are. And then give us your top 10, put it in the comments so everybody can see it, so it's all a bit of fun. But yeah, I thought that would be quite an interesting Saturday for everybody. Right, let's get on with it. And of course, number one on the list, and it's in no particular order, is Harley-Davidson. Just go and talk about that quickly, come on. So the number one on my list then, the Harley-Davidson. Harley's funny in it because they're sort of, you could call them a little bit marmitey, can't you, for some people, because some people absolutely hate them and other people love them. And there's not an awful lot of middle ground, is there? But what is it I think about Harley that is the thing that I think you should ride? Well, one, it's the king of the V-twins, isn't it? It's that sound of this engine, which, a lot of the manufacturers are always sort of trying to say, oh yes, we have this 270-degree crank handle, all the rest of it, yeah, but, it gets the sound of a V-twin. Well, this is the bike. This is the engine, which encapsulates that. And the thing with Harleys, I remember I had the epiphany moment for me was when I took that Road King out. It was like an anniversary one. Was it a 100-year anniversary of the Road King of Harley? This thing was immense. Enormous, and I had a real reservation of getting on that bike. I thought, oh my god, it's like being in one of those ginormous cars. You're in a car park. You think, how am I going to park this thing? You think, how am I going to get through this gap? But once you got on a Harley, once I got on there, started it up, and this is that thing about starting a Harley. Do you know what? It conjures up images of old American bombers, do you know those things where you get those big radial engines? It's that thing of and it fires into life, and you expect lots of smoke to come out, and that's what Harleys are like. They're all immense. Even though this one looks sort of relatively small, the XR, it's still immense. When you sit on it, you are on something huge, and riding a Harley is like an event, really, and it's something you won't forget. And I think that's why I got these bikes this list. They're things that when you ride them, you have a whole new perspective on it. It's like, it's people that don't eat certain food, isn't it? No, I'm not touching that. We haven't tried it. but I think the Harley is one of those things. I think you've got to ride it, and I think you'll immediately go, most people anyway, will immediately go, oh, I see. I see what they're all about. And don't be frightened of it. Just, go with it. They do handle nicely. Even though they're huge, those big Road Kings, the weight is quite low down, so they tend to, go where you point them a little bit. But they are extraordinary things, and I think you get a sense. Every Harley that you can ride, you get a sense of its history and its legacy. So Harley is going to be my first on the list. Fantastic, and I love riding it. So I got this out of storage today. And as soon as I got on it, I thought, oh yeah, I remember. It's just an extraordinary piece of kit. So get on a Harley, that's the first one. Right, number 2 on the list, Ducati. Now I'm going to be a bit more specific about Ducati, because I think Ducatis are those sort of bikes which have this extraordinary legacy behind them. But why I think that it's one of these bikes you should ride. One, because it's Italian, and it's the only Italian on this list. And I could have picked others really, I suppose, Moto Guzzi and stuff like that. But the Ducati, and I'm talking about the era of Ducatis in the sort of, when the Monster came out and those like the 888 and those sort of bikes with that beautiful trellis frame and that absolutely superb L twin, the air-cooled L twins that they had. And I had the first of the fuel injected L twin monsters, which was the 800 IE, I think it was called. And there's something about those Ducatis from that period, which were when Ducati was sort of on their uppers at the time, weren't they? That they could still produce a bike which had so much, loads of these, but passion. When you got on it, you could feel all of that racing history, and the sense that the bikes were just sort of like almost like cobbled together from bits of racing bikes that they had, even though they're slightly different. But you know, they had the huge Brembos, the floating discs, the great suspension and that. But that engine, it's so torquey. That those air-cooled L twins, which I think of, I'm not going to say that the later Ducatis have lost that a little bit, but they don't quite have that sense of rawness that the earlier Ducatis had. And I think getting on that bike, every time I got on that bike, and it's the only bike, you know, that I've had that was starting the button, even sitting months in the garage, it would just always fire up. You always felt it was ready to go. It was, the minute you open the throttle, you know, it would just blast off, and you would get this extraordinary sound from the exhaust that you were sort of like, it was like a Pavarotti. There was like a big opera coming out the exhaust. And I think, remember, we're not talking about buying bikes, we're talking about just riding them once. And I think those early air-cooled Ducati L twins, they're a little bit in this sort of vein. They're just, there's a little bit of magic in there. You know, you're riding that sort of high performance. It's like being in a high performance sports car, that everything is beautifully tuned to just create all that magic. If you take one piece off, it won't work. It's got to be all there exactly as it left the factory, and there's something quite magical about a Ducati from that period. And I loved mine, and that changed my view of Italian bikes, that you shouldn't worry too much about, are they fragile, because you always get the impression they're quite fragile, but they weren't. They were absolutely bulletproof, those engines, you know. As long as you looked after them, they were sort of an engine that you could tinker with yourself, and I did many times. But they're just stunning pieces to get. So yeah, Ducati Monster or any of those early air-cooled L twins, but I think the Monster's a bit more forgiving than the sports bikes like the 888 and all those. But yeah, so number 2 was the Ducati. Get yourself on an early Ducati air-cooled twin. Okay. Right, number 3. Now this is an engine type. Okay, you might find this one interesting. So, a 2-stroke. Get yourself on a 2-stroke. And the reason for get yourself on a 2-stroke, a really nice racy 2-stroke, like an RDLC, anything like that has a power band. Because experiencing the power band of high performance 2-stroke is like nothing else on earth. And when I say power band, people don't understand that. I'm not talking about this. I'm actually talking about the way that the engine delivers its power in such a short, its highest torque and horsepower figure, when it's actually in maximum performance, in a very short band of revs. And you have this thing where you're riding along and you get this, and it shoots off, and it's such a short length, but it's quite intoxicating. And I can remember having, you know, when you're looking at things like RDs and, you know, Suzukis and stuff of that period, the power bands were extraordinary. That's extraordinary. And I had a little glimpse of that. The problem with 4-stroke engines and modern 4-strokes, because of the fuel injection and the way that they can manage the fueling and all the rest of it, you find that the power delivery is more linear. You don't get that sudden woof of injection of power. You get it on some bikes. You do get it on some bikes. Actually, funny enough, I had it on the Triumph 400X when I rode that out the first time. It had like a very funny little power band, which was quite nice. But the 2-stroke power band It's just something you've got to experience to really understand, and you've got to be ready for it on certain bikes when there's such a spike in power. You've got to be quite ready for it, because that tends to be when the wheel comes up. But it's an interaction with the revs, and also I think the exhaust and how you get a build of back pressure at a certain point, and that affects the way that the fueling and air mixture and all the rest of it happens. So they did try to tame that with the power valves and things like that to extend the power band. But yeah, two-stroke, get out on a two-stroke, a twin. I think a two-stroke twin is just the beautiful sweet spot for a power band. So if you can, get out on a two-stroke and see what the power band's all about, because you won't find it on bikes like this. Okay. Right, number 4. This would be controversial, wouldn't it? But this is something I was out on the other day. A GS, a big GS. Okay, why do I think you should ride a big GS? Because at least you'll understand why people buy them. It's as simple as that. You know, even if it is just to go down to the shops or to cross a continent, riding a big GS, as soon as you get on it and you pull away and you do your new first 100 yards, you just suddenly go, ah, okay, all right, yeah, I understand. I see why people, when they go to a BMW dealership and say, oh, you know, they're looking for a big touring bike, a big adventure bike. If you go on that first, it's very difficult to come down because anything else is going to be a bit of a letdown after a GS. You know, they were designed to cross continents, and they do that better than any other bike, I think, with a certain feel of it. And you know, when I rode that GS the other week, yes, it's too immense, it's too big, but as soon as you ride it, you get it, you understand it, and you think, oh, I wish I was 20 years younger. You know, there's a reason why they're still one of the best-selling bikes, you know, on the market, and you do wonder why. But when you ride it and you get a sense of that, this is sort of sense that you've got everything there. You don't need any more. You've got everything. There's nothing to add. It's all there, and it's perfect for what you want it for. So the GS, yes, try a GS just once, and I think you'll have a bit of appreciation when you see the people down at Starbucks. Right, my number five. Now this is one that it's probably slightly harder to achieve, I suppose, but it's a classic motorcycle. Okay. Now, when I say classic motorcycle, what I'm talking about really is that sort of, you know, early Triumphs. You know, nothing with fuel injection or anything like that. We're talking about bikes in that, you know, the old BSA Gold Stars and the Bonnevilles, the Daytonas, the old, you know, twin cylinder Triumphs and stuff like that. There's something quite magical, although you'll know you're going to probably end up like this somewhere along the line. There'll be a time when it's running beautifully and all is right with the world, you know, and you've gone out on a beautiful sunny day like today, and it's just, there's a certain something about riding a classic, particularly a twin, which there's nothing on earth like it. There's no other bike will give you that feeling that you're in your own headspace and you're transported to a time when, you know, what is it? Men were men and sheep were scared. It's that kind of thing where they, you know, the ton-up boys and all that sort of stuff. And there's something quite magical, particularly kick-starting a twin, you know, an old classic twin, and just firing it up. You know, what was I watching the other day? I was watching a thing about Brough Superiors, you know, where there's 317 little levers and buttons and things to pump and everything before you start. You know, you have that end of the classic market, but those easily accessible British twins, which really are the archetypal, you know, classic bike, aren't they? The twins from the UK. They're just magic. And I think you've got to experience it just once, but you've got to find someone who's going to lend you one, haven't you, really? But I know my Triumph, which is actually sitting in a cafe at the moment on display, every time I go up there, I look at it, I think, oh, God, I just want to kick it over. And you get that extraordinary sound of this fabulous on a twin. And when you rev it, there's something quite magical about that. So I think even though there's always a great risk riding a classic bike, that, you know, never meet your heroes, but I think you've got to do it once just to experience it, and before you won't be able to ride them at all. So that's number 5. Right, number 6. What's number 6? Well, this would be an oddity, but this is, I think this is one of those things that you see them about, and you think, I really would like to ride one of these, but you never feel quite brave enough to do it. And that's a scooter. And scooters of this type, I'm talking about things like Vespas, Lambrettas, and that style with that beautiful sort of cowling at the front. Because the odd thing about a scooter is, if ever you get to ride one, is the fact that you haven't got the tank and everything in front of you, so you've got all this sort of room. It's like sitting in a chair with handlebars, and it's a very odd feeling with the scooter. And obviously you've got the small wheels, and generally you might have just an automatic clutch, or you just shift change on the handlebars. But there's something quite magical about riding a scooter once you get used to it. And you can see why they're so popular, or so popular for the youngsters and that, and on the continent, like in Italy, with the Lambrettas and Vespas, that you could just jump on it, throw all your bags and bits in the in the front bit, and just ride off and just scoot off. And it's something lovely about a scooter, but it's unusual. It's an unusual feeling to start with. If you've never been on a scooter before, with that style of open front, if you like, or open middle, that's quite unusual. But it's worth having a go just to see what they're like. But I remember we hired one in India a couple of years ago, and it was a very odd sensation. I sort of wanted to get off as soon as I got on it, because I felt quite vulnerable, but then you realise where everybody's driving slightly slowly, so it didn't really matter. But a scooter, number 6. Right, number 7, and this is probably the ultimate apart from maybe Enfield, longest lived classic bike out there, isn't it? But a modern version, a Bonneville, a Triumph Bonneville. Just ride a Triumph Bonneville just once. And if you ride, the one I recommend would be a T100, okay, a water-cooled T100, and I think you'll realise why they've been so popular for all these years, because they still have the essence of where they started. I think those, but the T100 sort of it's the right size. The T120 is a beautiful bike, but to me it's too much. I think the T100 encapsulate what the era of the modern classic bike is in the UK these days, and it's kept biking alive, isn't it? Because it's people of my generation who continue to buy bikes, and we were lucky that we didn't go down this ultra modern route, the space age. We stayed with the classic essence of what a motorbike is, and I think the Triumph T100 Bonneville is that. So get out on a Bonneville, because I think it's an absolute cracking bike and well worth a look. If you've never ridden one, try one. Right, number 8. What's number 8? Well, it's going to be a generic term, but a sports bike. Everybody should go out on a sports bike just once, and this is going to be the sort of like the red herring, because when you get to my age, you know why you don't ride sports bikes. So, try a sports bike just once. Anything, it could be anything, couldn't it? It could be a Fireblade or whatever it is, an R1, just so you can have 10 minutes down the road before you need to get off, and rest your shoulders, rest your wrist, and rest your backside. So do go out on a sports bike just once. Don't matter what it is, but go on it just once, just so you know not to ride it again. Right, number 9, and this is one that's close to my heart. It's the Royal Enfield Classic 350. And why is that? Because I think everybody should be able to ride a Classic 350 just to understand why they're so great, why it's such a ubiquitous bike for so many people. You get to understand that 20 horsepower is actually enough when you get to a certain level in your riding, that you realise you don't need 100 horsepower anymore. I just want to get to A to B, but in style. And the Enfield Classic 350 does that. Every time I ride mine, I just think it's great. It's just a great bike. And I think if you can't have an opinion on it until you've ridden it, and you've ridden a few miles in it. and I'm sure you'll come around to the thinking that, damn, this is a good bike. I understand that. I really understand it. So the Royal Enfield Classic 350, that's number 9 on the list. Right, my final one, number 10. And what is that? It's nothing specific. But what it should be, it's the bike you always promised yourself. The bike that you always think, every time you see one, you think, damn, I wish I had one of those. I'd really like to experience what that was all about. And for me, it would have to be a pristine Yamaha RD350LC. Okay, I just think they are beautiful bikes. They encompassed a whole genre and generation of motorbikes, you know, in that two-stroke era, which were just extraordinary pieces of engineering. And you know, that's why they're so popular still today. So for me, it would be the RD350LC. I just think they're stunning pieces of equipment. You get that beautiful power band, but they're fabulous bikes, and that would be my ultimate bike, the one that I've never ridden, and it's the one that I would love to have, and just to go out on and just to open it up down a straight somewhere. Marvelous. Right, so there's my top 10. Did anybody guess any of those before they came up? So remember to put into the comments, you know, give us your top 10 list, and that means everybody can look at those and see how many of those match up and see if any of them were similar to mine. Right, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm going to go and get a coffee because it's still a beautiful day. I've got the Harley, which was number 1 on the list, wasn't it? And I can enjoy firing this up like an American B-52 bomber and head off and get a coffee. Right, look after yourselves and please ride safe. Take care.